You're nothing but a doormat in this family." My in-laws screamed in my face. I didn't say a word, just left. 48 hours later, they were begging on their knees when they discovered who I really was. I, 34M, was sitting at my computer late Sunday night when a shipping notification pinged my inbox. It wasn't mine. My wife, 32F, had used my laptop and forgotten to log out of her email. I was about to close it when another email caught my eye. Surprise vacation, do not tell him. I shouldn't have opened it, but something about seeing my name explicitly mentioned made my finger click before my brain could object. The email chain was between my wife and her parents. They'd booked a 2-week luxury cruise for next month for my wife, them, and my brother-in-law. Not me. The date's perfectly aligned with our anniversary. "He probably won't even notice you're gone," my father-in-law had written. "He'll be too busy with those dusty books." I've been a rare manuscript authenticator for our entire 6-year marriage. Not exactly glamorous, but it's specialized work I'm passionate about. "We'll tell him it's a family emergency," my mother-in-law suggested. "He never questions anything." But it was my wife's response that gutted me. "He's so clueless. Remember last Christmas when you forgot to get him a gift, Dad? He still brought you that expensive whiskey this year. Total doormat behavior, lol." I felt physically ill. 6 years of marriage, and this was how they talked about me when I wasn't around? I closed the laptop and went to bed before my wife got home from her girls' night, which I now questioned. I barely slept. The next morning, I called in sick and spent hours combing through our shared devices and accounts. My wife had saved years of family group chats to our cloud storage. I discovered a long history of conversations mocking me. Using my work schedule to plan family events I couldn't attend. My in-laws repeatedly mentioning how they viewed my career with disdain. I also uncovered evidence that my wife had been allowing her parents to use our shared credit card for emergencies without telling me. The charges weren't enormous, but added up to thousands over time. Dinners, shopping trips, even airline tickets labeled as loans. They never repaid. The most recent messages were about my upcoming authentication job for a private collector. I'd mentioned it was potentially my biggest client yet, and they were laughing about how I was getting excited over old paper, while my father-in-law was closing million-dollar deals. I felt like I'd been living in a simulation where everyone knew the rules except me. That evening, my wife invited her family over for dinner. Something about my brother-in-law's new promotion. I cooked as usual. While setting the table, I overheard my father-in-law in the living room. "So has the doormat figured out you're going on the cruise yet?" "Dad, shh, he's in the other room." My wife giggled. "Oh please, he never stands up for himself. I could tell him to his face and he'd probably just offer to drive you to the port." Dinner was excruciating. My brother-in-law bragged about his promotion, while my father-in-law kept making pointed comments about real careers and actual success. My mother-in-law repeatedly mentioned how generous they were to include my wife on their family vacation next month. "What vacation?" I asked, playing dumb. "Oh, just a little trip," my wife said quickly. "Nothing exciting." "Not like you'd want to go anyway," my brother-in-law smirked. "Probably too much sun for someone who spends all day in a dusty office." I nodded and kept eating. My father-in-law, apparently emboldened by my silence, continued. "You know, I've never understood why you waste your talents on, what is it again? Old books." "Manuscript authentication," I corrected. "Right, paper. Meanwhile, men your age are building real careers, providing properly for their families." I remained silent. "See?" My father-in-law gestured toward me with his fork. "This is what I'm talking about. No backbone." My mother-in-law jumped in. "Dear, we don't mean to be harsh. We just think our daughter deserves someone more ambitious." I looked at my wife, waiting for her to defend me. She stared at her plate. My father-in-law, frustrated by my silence, finally exploded. "You're nothing but a doormat in this family. Christ, show some spine for once." I carefully put down my fork, folded my napkin, and placed it beside my plate. Without a word, I stood up, grabbed my jacket and keys, and walked out. Behind me, I heard my brother-in-law laughing. Look at him running away instead of standing up for himself. I drove straight to my office and spent the night on the couch there. By morning, I had 17 missed calls and countless texts from my wife. "Where are you? You're embarrassing me." My parents think you're being childish. This is so immature. Just come home. I ignored them all. Instead, I made a series of calls, first to my personal bank accounts, which my wife didn't have access to, then to my attorney, and finally to my client. The biggest yet, that my wife's family had mocked. What my wife and her family didn't know, what I hadn't told anyone, was exactly who this client was. Not just any collector, but a reclusive tech billionaire who'd been buying historically significant manuscripts through anonymous intermediaries for years. I'd been working with his team for months, building trust, proving my discretion and expertise. The manuscript in question? A previously unknown early draft of a famous physicist's theory that would rewrite scientific history. My authentication would determine if it was the $8.4 million my client was prepared to pay. My commission was substantial, 7%, $588,000. The contract was being finalized this week. I spent the day setting things in motion. I moved some money from my business account to a new personal account my wife couldn't access. I contacted a real estate agent about temporary housing, then I checked into a hotel for the night. After 2 nights of radio silence, my wife's texts turned desperate. Please just tell me you're okay. My parents are sorry, they didn't mean it. I'm really worried now. On the 3rd day, I finally replied, I'm fine. I'll be home to talk tonight, alone. I arrived to find not just my wife but her entire family waiting in the living room. My father-in-law stepped forward, hand extended. We may have been a bit harsh the other night. I ignored his hand. I said alone, I told my wife. We're family, my mother-in-law insisted. We solve problems together. Like planning a vacation on my anniversary without me, or mocking my career behind my back for years? That kind of together? Their faces registered shock. How did you? My wife began. You left your email open on my laptop. I found the vacation plans, which led me to discover all the other conversations you've been having about me. My father-in-law recovered quickly. Now hold on. A few private jokes don't justify this disappearing act. It wasn't just jokes, I cut in. It was years of disrespect, using our shared credit card without my knowledge, deliberately scheduling family events when I couldn't attend. I have the receipts, literally and figuratively. My brother-in-law scoffed. So what if we had a few laughs at your expense? You never seemed to care before. I didn't know before, I replied. And now that I do, things will change. What's that supposed to mean? My father-in-law demanded. I turned to my wife. I've moved most of my things to a temporary place. I've also removed myself from our shared credit cards after paying them off. I won't be responsible for any new charges. My mother-in-law gasped. But we had an understanding about those cards. Our daughter said, my wife had no right to let you use them without my knowledge, and I've calculated that you've borrowed over $7,000 over the past 3 years without repayment. My father-in-law stepped toward me. Now you listen here. No, you listen, I said calmly. For once, you're going to hear me out. I've spent 6 years being patient, respectful, and understanding while you treated me like dirt. That ends today. I pulled out my phone and showed them the email I'd received that morning, the official contract from my client's team, complete with my commission details. This dusty old book job you've been mocking? It's going to pay me $588,000, one authentication job. Their faces went from angry to stunned in seconds. That's impossible, my father-in-law stammered. Your little authentication business doesn't make that kind of money. It does when the world's most reclusive tech billionaire is your client. The name recognition hit them like a physical force. My father-in-law, who worked in finance, looked like he might pass out. The tech billionaire? The same. He values discretion and expertise, 2 qualities your family clearly doesn't understand. My wife stepped forward, tears in her eyes. I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered? Would it have stopped you from calling me a doormat? From laughing at me with your family? The amount isn't the point. It's the disrespect. My father-in-law's tone changed completely. Son, I think we've had a serious misunderstanding. If we'd known you were working with someone of that caliber. That's exactly the problem. My worth to you is tied to my income or client list, not who I am as a person. I walked toward the door. I'll have my lawyer contact you about next steps, I told my wife. Wait, she grabbed my arm. You can't just end our marriage over one mistake. It wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern that all of you participated in for years, and now that you know I'm not the doormat you thought I was, suddenly you want to reconcile? That's not how respect works." My father-in-law stepped forward. "Be reasonable. We can work this out as a family." I looked at him evenly. "We're not family. You made that very clear." As I walked out, I heard them arguing behind me, my brother-in-law blaming my wife for not knowing about my client, my mother-in-law insisting they could fix this, my father-in-law already on his phone, probably checking if the billionaire was really my client. 48 hours later, my phone was flooded with messages from all of them. My father-in-law had left voicemails offering investment opportunities. My mother-in-law sent texts about healing as a family. My brother-in-law suddenly wanted to grab beers and talk manuscripts. My wife alternated between begging for reconciliation and demanding explanations for why I'd hidden my success from her. I replied to none of them. Instead, I focused on finalizing my authentication report for my client, securing an apartment, and starting therapy to process everything. 1 week after walking out, I received a certified letter from my father-in-law. Inside was a handwritten note apologizing profusely, along with investment information for a sure thing he wanted to offer me as a gesture of goodwill. The transparent attempt to access my new wealth was almost laughable. My wife showed up at my office the following day, in tears. "I miss you. I'm sorry for everything. Please come home." "Would you have apologized if you hadn't discovered my client's identity?" I asked. Her hesitation told me everything. "That's what I thought," I said softly. "I deserved better, someone who respects me regardless of my bank account." "I can change," she insisted. "We all can." "Maybe, but I'm not willing to be your doormat while you figure it out." Yesterday, my authentication confirmed the manuscript's authenticity. My client was pleased and immediately commissioned me for 2 more significant projects, each with similar compensation. While the news remained confidential between my client's team and myself, word somehow reached my father-in-law, who called 13 times in 1 hour. I don't know what the future holds. I'm leaning toward divorce, but I haven't made any irrevocable decisions yet. What I do know is this: I'm not a doormat anymore. I never really was. I was just a patient man who finally ran out of patience. And to anyone who's been treated like you're less than by the people who should value you most, sometimes walking away quietly is the loudest statement you can make.